Do you ever feel like you're always just one unexpected bill away from total chaos? Like, you're doing the best you can. You work hard, you try to be responsible, but then life throws something at you. A car repair, a dental emergency, your kid's school trip you didn't budget for, and suddenly, everything unravels. Again, and in that moment, it doesn't matter how good your intentions were. It doesn't matter how many money podcasts you've listened to or how many budgeting apps you downloaded last New Year. Because what you don't have is a cushion, that safety net. And that makes everything feel a little scarier, a little heavier. If that sounds familiar, I just want to say this. You are not alone, and you're not failing. You're just living in the real world, where rent is high, groceries keep getting more expensive, and most of us didn't grow up being taught how to build financial safety from the ground up. But here's the thing. No matter how tight your budget is, even if you're juggling bills and debt and kids and all the responsibilities that come with adulting, it is possible to build an emergency fund, even a 6-month one. And it doesn't have to feel like punishment. It doesn't have to mean depriving yourself or giving up every little joy. What it does take is a shift in mindset, a few smart habits, and a bit of patience. That's what I want to talk to you about today, because I've been there too. A few years ago, my car broke down, not the usual kind of replace the battery situation. I'm talking engine died on the highway and had to be towed kind of breakdown. I had no emergency fund. I had credit cards, sure, but I was already juggling a balance, and that repair bill, it hit me like a train. I remember sitting in my apartment, staring at the invoice, wondering how the hell I was going to pull myself out of this again. And that's when I realized surviving was no longer enough. I needed to protect myself from this constant financial whiplash. So, if you're tired of being in that same loop, feeling like you're one bad week away from everything falling apart, stick with me. Because this is exactly where things can start to change. The first thing I had to do, and maybe you'll relate, was stop waiting for the right time to start saving. I used to tell myself, I'll start saving when things calm down, when I get that raise, when the debt is under control. But here's what I've learned. Life rarely calms down on its own. And if we wait until we feel ready, we might never actually begin. So instead, I flipped the question. I stopped asking, when can I afford to save? And started asking, what can I afford to set aside right now, even if it's small? Because small is still progress. Small builds momentum. At first, it was literally $5 a week. That's it, the cost of a fancy coffee or one takeout side dish I didn't really need. It felt laughably small. Like, what's this gonna do? But you know what? Watching that balance grow, even slowly, gave me a feeling I hadn't had in a long time. Control. And in a season where everything felt uncertain, that was huge. The second thing that changed everything for me was naming my emergency fund. And I know that might sound silly, but hear me out. When I labeled that savings account just savings, it felt vague, easy to ignore, easy to dip into when I wanted to buy something random on impulse. But when I changed the name to security fund, I kid you not, it became personal. It reminded me that this wasn't just about money. It was about peace of mind. It was about not feeling helpless when life threw a curveball. So if you're setting up a fund, name it something meaningful. Call it your peace fund, your no panic account, your freedom buffer. Whatever makes you feel connected to the why behind it. Because when the purpose is emotional, you're more likely to protect it. Now I want to pause here for a moment, because I know what some of you might be thinking. Okay, sure, I get it. Start small. Name the account. But where do I find even that small amount when I already feel stretched to the limit? And that's real. I hear you. We live in a world where the basics cost more than ever. Housing, health insurance, gas, childcare. For a lot of people, there isn't some obvious pile of extra money just sitting around waiting to be saved. So instead of looking for big sacrifices, I started looking for small patterns, places where money was slipping through the cracks without me noticing. And no, I'm not going to tell you to stop drinking lattes. I actually like lattes. What I am saying is, sometimes we spend money reactively on stuff that doesn't even make us happy, just because we're exhausted or overwhelmed or trying to keep up with what everyone else seems to be doing. I remember realizing I was spending over $120 a month on food delivery apps. Not because I loved the food that much, but because I was too tired to cook after work. So I started prepping just one meal a week in advance, something easy like a rice bowl or pasta, and suddenly I had a fallback. One night of takeout became one night of leftovers. That's $20 right there, and I tucked it straight into my security fund. Little by little, those shifts added up. But it wasn't just about cutting back. It was about reconnecting with my priorities, asking myself, would I rather have this thing now or that peace of mind later? And honestly, most days, peace of mind won. That's how it starts, with one choice. One meal cooked at home, one impulse purchase skipped, one small transfer to an account with a meaningful name. You don't need a big salary or a financial advisor to begin building your safety net. You just need a moment of clarity, the kind you might be having right now, and the willingness to start where you are. Let's keep going from there, because this is just the beginning of how we reclaim our financial security, even when it feels out of reach. So once I started putting those little amounts aside, something surprising happened. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trusting myself to follow through, even in small ways. That's something a lot of us don't talk about, right? How hard it is to rebuild trust with ourselves after years of survival mode spending. When you've had to prioritize putting food on the table over future savings, or when every extra dollar has always gone to someone else, like your kids or your partner or a bill collector, saving can start to feel selfish or even impossible. But what I want to remind you of is this. Building an emergency fund isn't a luxury. It's a form of care. It's not about hoarding money. It's about creating breathing room for the you that's tired of barely hanging on. It's giving future you the gift of less panic and more choices. And sometimes that gift starts with saying no to things that don't actually serve you, not out of guilt, but out of love. Let me give you an example. I had this habit of always saying yes to every social invite. Birthday dinners, casual drinks, work lunches, kids' playdate snacks. It added up. And I'm not saying you have to shut yourself in and stop having a life. Not at all. But I started noticing that some of the spending wasn't really bringing joy. It was just me trying to keep up or avoid feeling left out. So I started making what I call compassionate trade-offs. I'd say yes to the friend I hadn't seen in months but skip the third happy hour that week. Or I'd go out but eat dinner beforehand and just get a drink. I stopped thinking of it as missing out and started thinking of it as making space. For peace, for goals, for the version of me who didn't want to live in fear every time an unexpected bill showed up. And when I tell you how powerful that felt, to still connect, still be present, but also move closer to a 6-month cushion. I mean, it was one of the most freeing choices I'd ever made. The truth is, a 6-month emergency fund sounds overwhelming until you realize you don't have to build it all at once. You build it moment by moment, choice by choice. One day, it's $10 you didn't spend. Another day, it's a small refund or cash gift you decide not to touch. Over time, those moments compound. I remember the first time I hit $500 in that account. I literally took a screenshot and saved it to my phone like it was a trophy. Because it was. It was proof that I wasn't helpless anymore. I wasn't stuck. But there was still one more mindset shift I had to make. And honestly, this one took me the longest. I had to stop treating emergencies like if they happen and start treating them like when they happen. Not to be negative or expect the worst, but to be real. Because the reality is, life throws curveballs. Your car won't last forever. Appliances break, people get sick, jobs shift, and pretending otherwise only makes it harder when the inevitable happens. So instead of fearing those moments, I started preparing for them with calm intention. I'd tell myself, this money isn't going away. It's not lost. It's waiting for the version of me who'll need it most. That changed everything. Because now, when something did come up, like when my son had to get a sudden dental procedure, I didn't feel dread. I felt ready. I logged into my account, transferred the money, and took care of it. No credit card stress, no mental spiral, just a quiet sense of, we're okay. I've got this. And you deserve that feeling too. Not because you're perfect or because you figured it all out, but because you've decided to care for yourself in this really intentional way. Because you're building something steady, even if it's slow, even if it's not flashy. Now, Maybe you're wondering, but how do I save more than just small amounts? What if I want to move faster, but my income still feels tight? That's fair. And this is where I started getting curious, not about how much I was spending, but how I was spending. I realized there were certain habits draining me in ways I didn't even notice. One of them was emotional spending. Those little purchases I'd make when I was stressed or burned out or just wanted a hit of dopamine, like ordering things online at midnight because the day had been hard and I wanted something to look forward to. And listen, there's nothing wrong with treating yourself. We all need comfort. But I started asking myself, is this really helping or is it just numbing? Because those two things aren't the same. So instead of cutting myself off cold turkey, I started building in planned joy. I'd give myself a fun money envelope every month, even if it was only $30, and tell myself, go ahead, use this guilt-free, enjoy it. And weirdly enough, just having that permission made me less likely to overspend outside of it. It gave me boundaries and freedom. And that leftover money, it went straight to my emergency fund. Not because I was being strict, but because I was being intentional. When you start treating your money like a tool instead of a burden, everything shifts. You stop being scared of it. You start working with it, not against it. And here's the beautiful thing. Once you start building that habit of saving, even just a little at a time, you create a kind of ripple effect in your life. You start believing that stability is possible. You start showing up differently in your relationships, at work, even with yourself. Because deep down, you know that if life throws something your way, you won't fall apart. You'll be ready. Let's keep walking this path together. You've already started something powerful. Keep going. There's something really beautiful that happens when you finally stop asking, will I ever get ahead? And start saying, I'm building something, and it's working. Because that's what an emergency fund becomes over time. Not just a pile of money sitting in a bank account, but a quiet, steady reminder that you are no longer powerless, that you've created a little distance between crisis and collapse, that you're not starting from zero anymore. And let's be honest, for a lot of us in our 30s or 40s, that shift is deeply emotional, because we grew up believing that being good with money meant never messing up, never carrying debt, never falling behind. But the truth is, most of us are figuring this out as we go. While raising kids, working full-time, dealing with health stuff, navigating aging parents, going through divorce or burnout or career pivots. This isn't a game of perfection. It's a practice in resilience. And building a 6-month emergency fund, even slowly, is one of the most practical ways to reclaim that resilience. Now, if you've made it this far, you might already be thinking differently. You're not just reacting anymore, you're starting to plan. And that matters more than any dollar amount. But let's talk about the practical side of things for a minute. Because eventually, you'll want to grow your savings beyond the first few $100s. What helped me most was setting what I call micro milestones. Not just aiming for 6 months right out of the gate, because honestly, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, that feels impossible. But breaking it down, I asked myself, what's 1 month of true bare minimum expenses? Not my ideal lifestyle, not the full budget with all the subscriptions and extras, just the absolute essentials: rent or mortgage, food, transportation, utilities, basic needs. That number became my first real target. For me, it was around $2,000. So instead of saying, save $12,000, which felt like climbing Everest in flip-flops, I told myself, let's get to $2,000 first. And every time I hit a new $100, $400, then $800, then $1,200, I celebrated it. I acknowledged it, because every step mattered. And I want you to hear that too. Every step matters. Even if you're putting in just $20 a week, that's not nothing. That's a powerful yes to your future. That's a version of you saying, I deserve to be protected. Now let's talk for a second about temptation. Because once your emergency fund starts growing, it can be very tempting to dip into it. You see that balance, and suddenly it's like, well, maybe I could just use it for this thing I really want. And sometimes the line between want and need starts to blur. Here's what I did to protect myself from, well, myself. I kept my emergency fund in a separate bank, one I didn't use for everyday transactions. No debit card attached. No easy transfers from my main checking account. I made it just inconvenient enough that I had to think twice before touching it. And those few extra steps, they helped me pause. They gave me space to ask, is this really an emergency, or is it just uncomfortable? Because here's the truth. Not everything urgent is an emergency. Sometimes it's just pressure, or impulse, or feeling like we're falling behind. But your emergency fund is sacred. It's your shield. It's not meant to be touched every time life feels inconvenient. It's there for when life gets truly hard. And when those hard moments come, because they will, you'll be able to meet them with something most people never get to feel in a crisis: stability. You'll be able to say, this sucks, but I'm okay. I planned for this. That is powerful. I think the most surprising part of this journey, for me, was how much my relationship with money changed once I stopped being afraid of it. Once I stopped hiding from the numbers. Once I stopped avoiding the bank account like it was a monster under the bed. Because when you stop living in fear of what if, and you start creating a plan for when it happens, the anxiety starts to loosen its grip. You start walking a little taller, sleeping a little better, making decisions from a place of strength, not panic. That's what I want for you, not perfection, not some Pinterest-worthy savings tracker or flawless budget spreadsheet. Just progress. Just a life with a little more ease, a little more breathing room. Just the ability to say, I've got myself covered, even when things get messy. So wherever you are right now, whether your emergency fund has $10 or $1,000, I want you to know that this work you're doing, it's brave, it's smart, it's healing, and it's absolutely worth it. You don't have to hustle your way into peace. You just have to keep showing up for yourself, one small decision at a time. And hey, if any part of this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What's the hardest part of saving for you right now? Or what's one small win you've had lately? Let's talk about it, because you are so not alone in this. And if you found this helpful, go ahead and like this video or subscribe if you want more content like this. Stuff that's real, practical, and made for people just trying to make life work. Your story is still being written. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're just getting started. And your future self is already thanking you for the steps you're taking today. You've got this.